What's up, everybody? I made this joke with Louis John when he came on last week. I was like, this still doesn't have a name, and I'm still trying to brainstorm that. I thought we're gonna go with the chat, something simple like that. What do you think?
Hey man, listen, it's all about branding. Whatever your brand is, you got to lean into it, shamelessly self-plug it, and hope that you don't piss enough people off. So whatever that amounts to for you, you got to do what you got to do.
I think when I did it with Louis, Joel Pearl has a running joke that him and I have like horrible wrestling takes, so I just called it the Bad Take Boys, and I thought that was good.
No doubt about that. I mean, your takes aren't great, but Louis are just abominable. So I reached the point where I screenshot Louis Dangor's takes now.
Him and I have a whole plan for WrestleMania week at this point, where I'm going to take him to get his first tattoo. That's going to be. I feel like we just need to do like an entire running vlog of this. Are you gonna be at WrestleMania?
Yeah, I'll be there from Thursday to Saturday morning. I won't be at WrestleMania itself, but I'll be in Dallas doing some business Thursday to Saturday morning. So
one
of my best friends is getting married that weekend, so I'm in that wedding, so I have to prioritize that.
You know that I think it's a Buffalo Wild Wings commercial where the narrator's like, "What kind of monster has their wedding on game day?" This is WrestleMania weekend for this guy. My goodness.
Yeah, well, it's not exactly the biggest WrestleMania card ever here. And, it's funny. Last year I got to check it off my bucket list, covering WrestleMania in a press box. Got to do that last year. I really wanted to go to Jerry World because I've never been to Jerry World, and I would have loved to have done that, but I don't feel very incentivized this year with this WrestleMania card and how it's shaping up. I mean, if Stone Cold Steve Austin ends up on it, would I have loved to have been there to see that? Sure. But outside of that, I don't really feel like there's nothing that I can't just kind of catch up on. So that's just how it is for me. And I hope for anyone watching, maybe it's different for them. But for me personally, that's how it is.
Outside of the Brock Roman title unification match, I mean, this could be a card for Great Balls of Fire, and I don't think anybody would be too confused about it.
Great Balls of Fire wasn't a bad pay-per-view, though. That's the funny thing about that show. If I remember it correctly, that it had a... Yeah, what was...
Was Samoa Joe and Brock on that pay-per-view?
Samoa Joe and Brock, yes. That was a good match. I liked that match.
It was. But let's talk about you, my friend, because you're doing a bunch of stuff right now, obviously, with the multiple shows you do, The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, the Wives of Wrestling podcast. The one with Matt, I mean, it's become my favorite wrestling podcast. I'm not just saying that because you're my friend and I'm staring you in the face right now. But how did that come to be? How did you get in touch with Matt? Be like, hey, do you want to do this?
Yeah. So about 3.5 years ago or so, I was just kind of racking some ideas in my head, and I said to myself, who would make for a great pro wrestling podcast? And my two guys growing up outside of like The Rock, because like everybody liked The Rock, were Matt Hardy and Kurt Angle. And everyone kind of favored Jeff in the Hardy Boys, generally speaking. But I always felt like Matt was the secret sauce of the Hardy Boys. There was something different about him. You could tell that he was the brains behind the operation. And as we saw his career unfold and he proved that he was a serial reinventor, I just said to myself, man, this guy would make for a great podcast. So I had that in my head. And then last summer, Matt followed me on Twitter and we just exchanged pleasantries. Then once I signed with my current gig and it came time to start pitching some ideas, I said, okay, now it's time for me to shoot my shot. So I'm going to do that. And I reached out to Matt. I said, man, I just need 5 minutes of your time. I got this idea. I've had this idea for a really long time. I want to pitch it your way. About 3 weeks went by without me hearing anything. And then one day I just got a call on my phone and said, Matt Hardy. I said, Matt, I just need 5 minutes of your time, man. And we spoke and he said, I'm interested. We sat down at a Chipotle in Orlando. It was supposed to meet for like an hour or so. Ended up meeting for almost 2.5 hours. Banged out almost an entire year's worth of shows. And we were off and running.
Now, Matt, I mean, you touched on his reinvention. And, people may not, what's the word I'm looking for? When you think of Matt Hardy, they may not think of that right away. But you look at all he's done from going to Team Extreme to Version 1 to, the feud with Jeff, where he was kind of the the villain Hardy Boy, and then the entire thing, obviously, with the Broken Universe. Now we get a Hardy Boy reunion that has been announced for a bunch of indie scenes. How excited has Matt been to reunite with Jeff after it's been a few years since we've seen that?
He's incredibly excited. It's gets brought up in every phone call that I have with him. He's really, really looking forward to this kind of being the last run of the Hardy Boys and getting a chance to send things out on his note. I wasn't sure, or I'm not sure rather, if he ever really thought that he'd get this chance to go out the way they came in and do things on their terms, given the contract situations, if their bodies would hold up. But now they do have this opportunity. And for a wee fee, your promotion can bring in the Hardy Boys. And their March and April are stacked, and they got more dates they're going to be announcing soon too. So I know it means a lot to him, and whatever happens with it. Whatever evolution we see of the Matt Hardy character on TV will happen, and it's fun to see it play out. It really is, and I'm enjoying it from afar and getting to hear it in Matt's voice. It's pretty genuine.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on the contract situation. Obviously, Jeff was with WWE, and Matt had come over to AEW. And now everybody's fantasy booking every tag team under the sun facing the Hardys. Whether they're going to face the winner of the SATs and the Briscoes. But everybody's like, oh, can we get the Hardys against the Young Bucks again, like they did the night before the WrestleMania return? So Hardys against FTR. Like there's so many different things that everybody's just really excited for. And you know what, Matt Hardy, good for them, good for him and Jeff. It's awesome that they get to do this, like you said, on their own terms. In terms of Matt, though, I mean, what he's been doing for the past about a year and a half or so with the Hardy family office and AEW and whatnot. What have you for him going forward? What do you think is going to be kind of his next trajectory? Obviously with Jeff there, but are we going to get maybe a few of those dream tag matches? Do you think?
Who's to say if Jeff will show up? It's certainly one of those things where it seems like there's a lot of chatter, right? But as we say in wrestling, like you'll believe it when you see it, right? It's only a fever dream to see a Hardy Boys reunion in AEW. I know as a fan of the Hardy Boys, I hope to hell it happens. But until there's a deal signed and things are ready to go, then who's to say? Would I love to see them and the Young Bucks do their thing again? Absolutely, I would. I'd love to see a proper payoff with Private Party, because I think if you have been paying attention to the story with the HFO and the AHFO, there's been a lot of love put into that over the years. And I understand that not a lot of fans have necessarily connected with this iteration of the Big Money Matt character. But with that said, I think Private Party has learned a lot from Matt. And we did an episode a couple weeks ago where we interviewed Private Party and they talked about the relationship. So whatever that payoff is, whenever that happens, whatever it looks like, I'm not sure. But I do know that there's been a lot of love put into making sure that the tag team division is taken care of, and Matt is a really big proponent of that. So we'll see what happens at Revolution this weekend, because it seems like things are close to becoming broken in the AHFO.
Yes, so it seems with Andrade El Idolo coming in and making it a joint operation. But it's very clear that Matt has a lot of admiration for Private Party. He's been associated with them for almost his entirety of being in AEW. Outside of the brief feud with Sammy Guevara, it's been a lot of the Orange Cassidy feud with Best Friends and Chaos and everything. So it's very clear that he sees a lot of potential in them. And look, I think that a lot of teams can get lost in the shuffle and the absolute stacked tag team division that AEW does have. But if you remember, 2019, 2020, Private Party was one of the low key talks of the town in AEW, making a splash in that initial AEW tag team tournament. Correct me if I'm wrong. They faced the Young Bucks in that, if I'm not mistaken.
They beat the Young Bucks.
I was going to say, was that them that beat the Young Bucks? That's what I thought. So
yeah.
that was.
But I think the thing is, if you watch their matches then versus now, you'll see the influence of Matt, where there is so much more aggression in their moveset. We talked about this on the podcast, and it was a lesson learned from Michael Hayes when he was running with the Hardy Boys. And he said to them, you can do all your flips and all that stuff, but you have to look like you can believably beat the crap out of the person that you're in the ring with. So Matt was trying to impart that on them, that if you're going to have these matches, you can do your stuff that makes you special, but you have to be aggressive. you have to prove that you can, as he likes to say, pound that ass. You have to be able to show that you can get nitty gritty and be a believable fighter. Pro wrestling is built on the illusion of fighting. So the audience has to buy into the fact that Mark Quinn or Isaiah Cassidy can beat the crap out of their opponent as well.
And let's shift gears now to the Wives of Wrestling podcast, because this is something that is a unique entity in itself.
Yes, got the swear jar here ready to go.
So how did that come to be as well? Was it similar to how things went with Matt? You just pitching ideas,
completely opposite.
Okay.
So yeah, my bosses came to me and they said, "Here's the deal. Giovanna Angle and Kim Orton want to do a podcast. You're going to be the host. Figure it out." And that was it. No direction, no nothing. It was just these two ladies who you've never met in your life want to do a podcast, and you're going to host it. Now tell us what it's going to look like. So I spent the next 2 months or so kind of coming up with a game plan of, okay, what does this show look like? Who would the target audience be? Then I had to spend 3 months, 4 months, almost 5 months building a rapport with these two women that I had never met, who are the wives of two very famous men.
Mm-hmm.
And thankfully we hit it off like that. Our chemistry was immediate. So that worked out well, but we had to come up with what our show looked like. And there was this impasse of, okay, is our audience the horny wrestling fan who thinks these two women are hot? Or is it the Total Divas audience, the Real Housewives audience, the people like my mom and my sister who don't give a crap about pro wrestling at all, but when they saw the Bella Twins, they're like, oh, they're cool. That's what we figured our audience would be. So we came up with this concept of your personal Monday happy hour. Start your week off right with this little fun show where for an hour we just talk about life and we learn lessons and give advice and drink and swear. And the response to it has been mind-blowing. I've been just so taken aback by what people have had to say about this show. And I'm really proud of Kim and Giovanna too, because they didn't really know anything about on-air performance when we started. And I spent a lot of time coaching them and working with them. We did some dry rehearsals and stuff. And they have finally just learned to be themselves. And their authentic selves are awesome. So yeah, it's been a total blast. And it's different, right? Like there's so many pro wrestling podcasts out there. So you have to do something different. And I think this fits that.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about the stories that wrestlers have, but I mean, the same could be said for their families, their wives. And I assume that Giovanna and Kim have a medley of stories about, whether it be, times on the road or just home life with both Kurt and Randy. So I think that helps definitely give like a different insight, like especially for wrestling fans who want to know those things.
Yeah. And it's not just like me asking them questions about Kurt Angle and Randy Orton. We're talking about like life lessons. This past week, we did an episode on just food and we talked about our guilty pleasures, but then also what happens when your kids are picky eaters? What do you do? They're both mothers of upwards of 5 kids. So they've been through it all. They've been through the ringers. They understand. So we give that very human perspective on things. And then I love human is like the big word. Humanizing is the term I use with them all the time when we're talking. So how can we humanize Kurt Angle? How can we humanize Randy Orton? And eventually we're going to get guests on there. And sure, you can be like, oh, I would love to hear what Brie Bella has to say about Bryan Danielson. But wouldn't it be just as interesting if we get Paul White's wife on? Someone that you don't know talking about, a guy like Paul White or Mark Henry's wife or stuff like that. So really looking forward to where we're going to go with that show. And like I said, the response has been overwhelming so far. So excited. Yeah,
no, and both shows have obviously done really well. How does it, for you, maybe the contrast, like I got to prepare, to talk wrestling with Matt, and then we're going to be, be talking about, food with Kim and Giovanna.
So different. So different. So I spend pretty much my entire week researching for Matt's show because I do all the research for it and I produce it and everything. I've got a great team of editors who post-produce everything and they're awesome. Shout out to Josh Wesley and Dominic, but it's the pre-production is all me, and I kind of learned in sports broadcasting from my mentor Ian Eagle that pre-production is production. So what you put into it is going to be the quality of your product. So I spend a lot of time, and right now Matt and I are going to do a series called Becoming Broken, and it's a 5-part series on the Broken character. And this week in Jacksonville and Orlando, we are taping 4 of the 5 episodes. So I have to have the research ready for 4 of the 5 episodes to go. And that I have been working nonstop. I'm staying at my friend's place right now. I just sat on his porch for 4 hours and just cranked out episode 2, or most of episode 2. And that involves going through weekly television reports, watching clips, going through newsletters, reading interviews, news articles. It is so immensely taxing. With the wives, I go to them, I say, ladies, what are we talking about this week? They pick the topic they want to talk about. I put a rundown together. I say, what are we drinking this week? They each pick their stuff, and then we go. So it's
and much less taxing.
Wildly, well, if it means to, but the shows are so different in my role as a host.
Right.
And this is where I feel my professional background in TV really helped me, because a good host knows how to play quarterback, and they facilitate the conversation in different ways. With Matt, my job is to ask engaging questions and follow up on everything he's saying and be well researched. With them, my role is, if they start getting too chatty, I got to bolt right into that and get them back and reel them in and then steer us into another direction. So it's 2 different roles in 2 very different shows. And I like that a lot as a broadcaster, because it challenges me and it keeps me on my feet.
And as somebody who loved the Broken Matt character, I cannot wait for that. That is going to be absolutely
very
fantastic.
exciting. I'm just going through this research right now, and there's so much stuff you forget about. And it's so funny, because I remember the first time I saw the Broken Matt character, and I told Matt this when I connected with him. I said, I didn't get it. I thought it was stupid as hell.
And I think that's how a lot of wrestling fans were first about it.
As I'm going back through the research and reading these articles that were written at the time, people were like, what the hell is this? Like, this is so dumb. It's time consuming. It's stupid. Nobody cares about Jeff versus Matt Hardy anymore. And then all of a sudden, the final deletion happens and everything changes. So it's really cool.
It went from final deletion to total nonstop deletion. Like I think Adam Blampied, I think, made the best comparison for Broken Matt Hardy. It became like the Sharknado of wrestling, where it was just so bad it became amazing, and everybody really got behind it.
It's bad, but I get what he's saying there, but it's really not bad. It's incredibly intricate. And as I'm going through the weekly TV reports, I'm seeing, because you can look back in hindsight now, right, and say, how did this play out? You're seeing little seeds planted months in advance that I haven't asked Matt about this yet, but I imagine he was heavily involved in that, because Matt is one of the smartest wrestling minds you're ever going to meet. So the payoffs are all there. And we start this series in April of 2015. And it goes all the way until the WrestleMania 33 return. So it's a 2-year time period that we're going to be covering pretty extensively, almost month by month. So you're going to start in episode 1 of it, and then come the final episode, you're going to be like, wait a minute, something that happened 6 months before he even went broken was paid off in the end. And that's the coolest thing about the long-term storytelling that Matt is so invested in, and the Hardy Boys are so invested in.
And not to get, too ahead of it, because I'm sure you're going to cover it, but was he and Jeff kind of ever pitching to kind of do that universe when they returned to WWE, or were they, okay with not doing it once they went back?
Yes, you're just going to have to find out on that one. Maybe there will be some surprises on the last episode, the WrestleMania 33 episode. Who's to say?
Now that, ladies and gentlemen, is what we call a teaser.
I will say, Matt and I, on that meeting we had in Chipotle, I just started picking his brain on stuff, and we talked about the WrestleMania 33 thing, and he's like, brother, the stories that I have about that are just insane. And he told me some of them. They are just even to, because I had always wanted to know, like, when did the other teams find out that you were
Yeah.
going to be in it? And how did you put a match together with them not knowing you're involved? And I got the answer to that. And it's an awesome story. So wait until that one drops on April 1st.
Oh, okay.
A month from today.
All right. I can wait 30 days for that. That's gonna be worth the wait. I did, we were talking in the lobby. I know how big a baseball guy you are now. So we can touch on your disdain, take a little bit break from wrestling real quick on your disdain for the Major League Baseball lockout right now. I assume you have Jeff Passan's tweet alerts on right now.
Jeff's a hell of a writer, I'll tell you that.
Mhm. Everything going on right now, obviously, it's a pain in the butt. A lot of baseball fans angry with Rob Manfred and how everything's, divvying out right now. It's very much, there's no other way to put it. Like, it's a pain. And when you look at it from the player's perspective compared to the owner's perspective, all of it coming back to Rob Manfred, it just doesn't seem like, at the end of the day, it's, why can't this deal get done?
Well, this has kind of been happening for the past 6 or 7 years. This has been boiling, where I think the players maybe accepted some deals that weren't all that favorable to them in the past in order to just make sure that they were getting a paycheck. And now they kind of had this collective realization of, hey, we need to stand up for what we feel is right. Whereas you have these owners who have lived within these parameters of a luxury tax threshold and keeping arbitration pools down over the past decade, more or less. The luxury tax was a little later, but it's a de facto salary cap. And it has kind of made the way of the land as it is right now. And whether you have positive or negative thoughts towards Rob Manfred as a commissioner, there have been some questionable statements in the past few years, from the medal trophy to the WWE title belt that was being given around to the teams that were keeping their salaries low. I mean, it was just, there's a lot of stuff, and the players have woken up to that. So you've got a pretty big impasse. There's a lot of war of words, and we're ultimately talking about billionaires who are paying millionaires, and these billionaires make a lot of money, and they're making even more money on a yearly basis. So generally in labor disputes, I find myself favoring the players, but everyone's entitled to their own discretion, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. And look, as somebody who, my field is NFL journalism, I'm not going to pretend I'm the most passionate about baseball. That said, I have a lot of friends that are. I have a lot of friends in the industry that are, in the profession of baseball,
Well,
making their living off baseball. So
think back to the football lockout a few years back. What was it, like 8 years ago?
2010, 2011.
Yeah, it was about 10 years ago. Yeah, the players wanted a fair share.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what they fought for, and they got it. Whereas in baseball, it doesn't work that way. And yes, the NFL has a salary cap, but there is a huge disparity right now in wages compared to revenue. So we'll see who blinks first.
That we will. So look, everything with, not getting a deal done today by 5 Eastern time. The owner's very willing. It's been made public. They're very willing to, delay opening day and cancel games. So we can hope for the best when it comes to that. But yeah, I'm with you in terms of, not siding with the billionaires, intending to be more player friendly when it comes to this. But you did tell me that, you're going to be pretty busy up to Revolution, which is coming up, my friend, as we get back toward the wrestling side of the conversation. It's an absolutely stacked card, by the way. And this might have, if there's any card that's going to top what we just saw, in August or September with All Out, Revolution looks like it could do that. I don't even know where to begin here.
Yeah,
but
All Out was the best wrestling show I've ever been to.
In terms of any pay-per-view that I've ever watched live, I think it was probably the best one I've ever watched live. Now you look at this card, we've got Punk and MJF in the rematch and a dog collar match. The second one that AEW has run, obviously the one with Cody and Brody Lee was fantastic that they did on Dynamite. just the history and both guys' clear love for professional wrestling history, having it be a dog collar match, both of their Piper references over the past few months, it feels right that this ends up being a dog collar match. Punk's promo saying that he needs a Valentine, like the wrestling nerd in me, like I was the Leo meme, like pointing. You're like, oh, I get it. So that's probably the match I'm most looking forward to, just because Punk is an obvious wrestling historian. MJF himself is a wrestling historian, and he's one of the rising stars in the industry. I think that's probably the one I'm most looking forward to. I don't know which match that you are most looking forward to on the card.
I think there's a lot of matches on this card that I'm really excited about. There's probably not a match that I'm not excited about. I think it's a great card. So yeah, that feud has been laid out perfectly. The promo from MJF this past week was exceptional. And the thing that's kind of going under the radar here is they've had this Wardlow split bubbling for the past couple months, and he helped MJF win the first one. So what would he do when MJF is tied to a dog collar and needs that extra help but can't quite get it? Could be interesting.
If there's a time to do it, I'd assume it would be either, if not at Revolution, very shortly after, because it's very clear that, with everything with Shawn Spears and MJF, the tension's becoming very noticeable. The fans are already very behind Wardlow. I would like to see that turn happen as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think that you run a risk when you have a turn building of pulling the trigger a little too late.
Sure.
And I think they're right on the bubble of that, so I do hope it happens soon as well.
And then Thunder Rosa, Britt Baker. This feels like Thunder Rosa is going to end Britt Baker's reign. And credit to Britt Baker. I mean, she's had a fantastic reign as champion. She's become the inarguable face of the AEW women's division during that time. Won plenty of, Pro Wrestling Insider or Wrestling Observer of the Year awards and whatnot. She's been fantastic. That said, it does feel like it's time to pass the torch to Thunder Rosa, who the fans are very behind. She has worked her butt off since officially joining AEW from NWA. I'm in for it. I want to see what she can do with the title, and I think that's what we're going to see is Thunder Rosa defeating Britt.
It could happen. Thunder Rosa is a great ambassador for AEW. She does awesome work on the independent scene, and it's really vocal in promoting women's wrestling.
Yes.
She's a great babyface. So I don't know what other babyface you'd have that you could heat up to be hotter than her to beat Britt Baker. So it does seem like it would be a viable option to have her win here.
It would. The other women's match, though, I mean, Jade Cargill, Ty Conti. I feel like that match. I think that match could low-key be better than the one between Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker, just because we've seen obvious growth with Jade. Ty Conti's been fantastic as well over the last year. I'm just as excited for that match, even though I think it's pretty evident that Jade's going to win. Ty Conti had that brutal tag team match not that long ago with the big thumbtack spot and everything. She's becoming a star in her own right. I'm almost maybe a little bit more excited for Thunder Rosa Britt, but I'm very excited for Jade against Ty Conti.
Yeah, I don't see it necessarily being better than Thunder Rosa and Britt, just because I think we've seen the chemistry Thunder Rosa and Britt have, and it's really special. And that Lights Out match last year was excellent, and I think you put them in there to have a straight up wrestling match, and I think it will be excellent. But Jade is coming into her own for sure. Ty Conti has really come into her own. I thought her match at Full Gear against Britt Baker was pretty good. So yeah, hopefully it's a good showcase match for both of them.
And a ginormous Smart Mark Sterling fan I am.
He's not a Jon Alba fan.
Isn't he?
He is not. He can I swear on this? Or
absolutely,
no? Yeah. I don't know if I still have it in my phone. I'd screenshot it. But
it's an inside scoop from Jon Alba.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's very public. Oh, here it is. Limitless Wrestling, one of the promotions that I work for, tweeted, "It's fuck Jon Alba hours" on June 13th, to which Mark Sterling quote tweeted, "Love those hours." So
wow,
I don't know what happened there, but yeah, not a fan.
Have you guys ever had any interactions that were?
I mean, we've been bad interactions? Not to my knowledge. I think Mark Sterling is just concerned with his clients, and Maybe he's threatened by an Emmy Award winner. Who's to say? I don't know. Not sure.
Do we think that was a kayfabe, Mark Sterling, or do we think that this was a shoot?
Who's to say?
You're right. But you know what? Some things are better left a mystery, are they not? No, I did not know that. That is is news to me, John.
Yes, it was news to me too.
All right. Well, we'll let that simmer, and everybody out there can decide for themselves what if that was a work or a shoot. The one match on this, speaking of Matt Hardy and everybody, what is it? Andrade, Matt, and is it Isaiah Cassidy against Sting, Darby, and Sammy, and the Trio Tornado tag match. Is this where we're going to see, I mean, in your opinion, or maybe the Andrade and Matt Hardy riff becomes, more than just a riff? It becomes what's it, permanent.
Next question.
Next question is fine with me. Hangman Page.
You're an NFL guy. You're a Drew Rosenhaus guy. Terrell Owens. Next question.
Oh, I love it. I love the fact that you know to speak my language, John.
There you go.
Adam Cole, Hangman Page, AEW
I can't wait for
World
this
Championship.
Match. I'm so excited for this match. I think this match is going to be tremendous.
I think it's going to be great too. Mostly for the fact that we've seen just about every AEW World Champion have a pretty long reign with the title. Eventually, there's going to be a guy who has a shorter reign. It feels right that Hangman would be that person, just because it would fit his character. He climbed the mountain, and now we're going to see what happens if he falls back down the mountain, what he does. I think that this is the right time, especially with everything going on between Cole, Red Dragon, the Young Bucks, when a certain Kenneth Omega returns. If Adam Cole is world champion at the time, I think it makes sense to put the belt on Adam Cole right now.
Yeah, Adam Cole would be a great guy to have carry the belt. And if there's that dissension within the ranks of the elite where Kenny eventually returns babyface, how crazy would it be to see him team with Hangman again as two outcasts this time? I think there's a great story to be told there and bring that story full circle. So I envision that happening at some point. When that happens, I'm not sure. But yeah, man, I think this is going to be the show stealer. I think this is going to be a superb match. And I could very well see either of these guys winning. I could see Adam Cole walking out of this as champion. Let me say, the Adam Cole discourse that's been going around social media is the weirdest thing. I don't understand it at all. And maybe you can explain it to me, because I genuinely don't get it. People are commenting on his body. They're saying that he's not treated well. I mean, I'm seeing this guy on TV every week, hanging out with his friends, having fun. Is that a bad place to be on TV? And he's in the main event of a championship match on pay-per-view. I don't understand the negativity in that. I
don't understand the negativity either. I mean, I will say I have definitely noticed that Adam Cole has gotten more buff and whatnot. Like, if you look at NXT Adam Cole from maybe like 2 years ago compared to where he is now, I think he's definitely gained some definite more like muscle mass and whatnot.
And the thing is, like, with his positioning, like, the depth of the AEW roster in that upper echelon is so much deeper than what NXT was. Yeah. NXT had a great roster, but Adam Cole was positioned as a top guy there because he could be. And with this, he's one of many guys who could potentially be a top guy. Yeah,
and I don't understand the whole thing where he's being treated poorly. He's going to be in the main event of a world championship match. Any sort of discourse that he's treated poor, I don't get that at all. I don't either. So I don't understand that side of things either. Ever since he's shown up in AEW, like, you can make the argument that every night that he's on a show, Adam Cole gets the loudest pop of the night, especially when the Adam Cole Bebe thing happens. It's always deafening. It is always like, the fans are very behind Adam Cole, and it's very clear that they are too, because it's a good chance that he becomes their world champion by the end of the week.
I think that it's extremely plausible. And if that happens, we'll see the route they go with Hangman Page and his rebuilding of his character. I don't think he's had the strongest title reign. He's had some good matches, but I don't know. Maybe because he hasn't been put in the main event all that much since winning. We'll see. I suspect it'll be an outstanding match. Hangman Page is one of my favorite performers out there. And I thought Matt and I, if I can cheap plug here, gave outstanding perspective on Hangman Adam Page on episode 2 of The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, because that episode was all about Hangman, and Matt had some really cool stuff that I didn't even think about with Hangman's story that were so great. So big ups to Hangman, and hopefully they go out there and kill it. And that match and Moxley and Bryan Danielson should be exceptional as well.
I love that episode, by the way. So if you haven't listened to episode 2 of The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, go and do that, especially if you're a Hangman Adam Page fan. Yes, Mox and Bryan Danielson. If I had to guess, I would think Mox beats Danielson. You know, they shake hands or whatever afterwards. I want the super stable of Mox and Danielson leading the way.
I would love if they stay heel. Maybe there's a fake shaking of the hands, and that's where those guys all join Danielson and beat down Moxley. How much fun would that be? Where that's where it happens, and Danielson went out and got those guys while Moxley didn't trust him. So it'd be a fun story to tell. It's just me throwing fantasy booking out there.
I was gonna say that's some good fantasy booking, Jon Alba. I like it.
Yeah.
If we get let's say something like that does happen, where maybe a Lee Moriarty, Daniel Garcia all come down to the ring and just start ganging up on Mox. Then we've got Danielson, Moriarty, Garcia. Maybe that leads to reuniting Mox and Eddie Kingston. I mean, obviously those two are extremely tight. We're a very good on-air tag team that had a banger match against the Young Bucks for the AEW World Tag Team titles last year. I wonder how they would attack that. That would be something that I would definitely enjoy seeing. It would be very fun. Face of the Revolution ladder match. The general discourse that I'm seeing is that the belief is that Keith Lee is going to win this match. I'm fine with that. I mean, everybody loves Keith Lee. Obviously wasn't treated the best at his former employer, and then comes in and makes an immediate splash with AEW. I'm very okay if he wins. It's a beefy ladder match thus far, by the way. I mean, we've got Keith Lee, Wardlow, Powerhouse Hobbs are all in it. Then we've got Ricky Starks and Orange Cassidy. I think that Lee would probably be the best option to win here. Wardlow's great. He's still kind of on an ascension. I think that it's somewhat clear that, and it's no disrespect to them, but I think Ricky Starks and Hobbs kind of have a ceiling right now compared to everybody else in the AEW roster. Again, I love Ricky Starks.
Agree with that, but
don't you? Okay, I would love to have a discourse about this then, because I like Ricky Starks a lot. I really do. Just compared to everybody, like you look at the roster as a whole, I just think that in terms of the pecking order, I feel like he would come up a little bit short compared to guys like.
I mean, Ricky Starks to me reminds me of like Dwayne Johnson, 1997. Like that's how good I think he is. I think Ricky Starks is that talented. Now, does that mean he'll become the next Rock? That's not what I'm sitting here saying. But he reminds me of that, where he's young, he's hungry, he can talk.
Yes,
he's pretty damn good in the ring too, and he's got something about him. He has an it factor. It's just, how has he been positioned versus how can he be positioned? And I think a feud with he and Sammy Guevara would be exceptional as a way to help break him out a little bit. And I think Will Hobbs, Powerhouse Hobbs, also has massive potential. I would love to see, and I think they didn't Will Hobbs do a Beal on Dante Martin the other day, where he tossed him just like Keith Lee tossed Nick Cassidy.
Yes.
So I would like to see a Keith Lee and Powerhouse Hobbs feud set up in this ladder match, because they mirrored each other in doing that spot. So maybe, I mean, Lee and Hobbs would be a freaking
lovely
boss fight. So I don't see Keith Lee winning this for that reason. And I think Keith Lee versus Sammy Guevara is a weird match right now. I wouldn't do that. Keith Lee should be, unless they're going heel with Keith Lee. If they're going heel with Keith Lee, then sure, then you could go for it. But if he's staying a babyface, I wouldn't do that match right now. I would prefer to see a Ricky Starks type win this match.
And I think I should rephrase it. I don't think that there's a world where Ricky Starks doesn't continue rising. I think what I'm trying to say, as of right now, where he is, he's still a little bit of.
I mean, he hasn't been positioned as a top guy yet.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm trying to say, is that he hasn't been in that position yet. Yeah.
Yeah, at some point you got to be, right.
Exactly.
At some point you're going to be positioned. So yeah.
If they do pull the trigger with him on winning this, I hope that he gets a better push than someone like Scorpio Sky did after he won it, because
that was disappointing.
It was
disappointing.
And look, I love Scorpio Sky. I love Ethan Page.
Right?
Yeah, both of those guys are great. I think
Both of them don't need to be in a tag team right now. They can excel as individual acts.
you are reading my mind. I think that they're so much better as single stars rather than being in the whole
And they're
men of
not
the
a
year
bad tag
fashion.
team. I like them as a tag team, but I would prefer to see them as singles guys for sure.
Very much agreed. So if they do have Ricky Starks win this, I hope that he has a better fallout afterwards than Scorpio Sky did, because they didn't really do too much to take advantage of Scorpio winning that.
I mean, look, it could very well be Keith Lee winning this thing. The way they telegraphed it with those Beal spots tells me that they're doing some underlying thing with Hobbs and Lee there, and that's a natural feud to do at some point. They're both like almost the same person in terms of body size. They're both athletic big men, and a guy like Hobbs could learn a lot from being in the ring with someone like Keith Lee.
Very much agree. I do want to see who does end up taking the title off Sammy Guevara, since you mentioned, maybe Ricky Starks being some guy who could kind of rise to that next level. I do know that I want to see somebody take it off Sammy. Like, face Sammy Guevara doesn't do it for me personally. He's not the best talker, in my opinion. He's fantastic in the ring. I haven't seen a bad Sammy Guevara match. I think I just prefer him as a heel rather than, I think it was Jay Shell. She said something to me where she said, Sammy Guevara's face persona can be defined as him sticking out his tongue and calling everybody bitch. And I was like, you know what? I can see that a little bit. I just prefer heel Sammy in that role more so.
I get that, but I also think when he's a babyface, it allows him to really exercise just how athletic he is and some of the incredible things that he can do in a way where you're using your moves to get a reaction from the crowd in a positive way and to garner compassion and garner empathy from a crowd. So that's why it doesn't really bother me that he's a babyface.
Yeah, that's fair. And again, watching him in the ring, like the cutter spot they had against Cody a few weeks ago, was maybe the best cutter spot in wrestling history.
It was awesome.
It was amazing. It was amazing. So, and look, he's still incredibly young. No one's to say that he can't improve as a babyface. I hope he does. But it does bother me, the fact that he's still carrying around both TNT titles. I don't know why. I'm very much nitpicking at that, but I'm not a fan.
Not sure what the deal is there.
But I would love to see somebody like Ricky Starks in that spot it seems that they're starting to give him more of that traction, which I think a lot of people have been clamoring for.
Let's hope so.
Yeah. Am I missing any matches on this card?
Jericho and Kingston.
Yeah, Jericho, Kingston, and the tag team match as well.
Mm-hmm.
Kingston beating Jericho is the obvious move with this match. I think that
I would hope so.
Yeah,
I'd like to see Eddie get a win on pay-per-view. I think that would be good for him. He doesn't necessarily have the best track record on pay-per-view, so I definitely would like to see that for him, and I think it'd be more beneficial than Jericho winning, but who's to say?
Yeah. If you look at his matches on pay-per-views, and his big matches have all been very good. It's just, he's lost to CM Punk, he's lost to Bryan Danielson, him and Mox lost to the Young Bucks.
Miro.
The Miro match, yep. So yeah, him getting a big win and look, I think they went out of their way to make sure that they sold this as Jericho being a big win for Eddie Kingston when they had that promo battle saying, in this company, I'm the big one. So I think that was very much utilized for when Kingston does win. It's looked at, okay, that's a big step.
I hope so.
Do you think that we see the return of heel Jericho at some point?
They've certainly been teasing that hard. So
yeah.
It seems like that would be a path that they would go. So I imagine Jericho plays the heel in this match. So just look at the dynamics of the match, and I guess we'll play it from there.
Sure. And then the triple threat tag match. Jurassic Express have had an underwhelming tag title run, to say the least. Not to say that Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus aren't fantastic, because they are. It's just the way that they've been positioned. The way that the tag division's been kind of positioned is that, okay, but what about the Young Bucks? I think that's what it'll always kind of revolve around is, what are the Young Bucks doing and how are they in storyline related to the champions? Obviously Red Dragon is qualified. I assume the Young Bucks are going to be the other team to do so.
Should be a hell of a match, huh?
Will be. It's going to be. Look, I can't remember the last time I saw a bad Young Bucks match, especially not on pay-per-view. Plus the storytelling that's going on with them and Red Dragon. Going to be an incredible.
Yeah, I mean, look, if Adam Cole and Red Dragon walk away as champions on this show, it's a hell of a story to run with.
Especially when Kenny Omega comes back, which I'm sure that a lot of. Yeah, exactly. Like, there's not been a murmur about that. Which, by the way, I mean, he's very much earned
Well,
however much
he
time
did
he
the
wants off.
interview with Dave Meltzer last week, and he said that he still has a lot of recovery to do. So,
Yeah,
who's to say?
it'll be a very fun night. I think we've touched on everything. Correct me if I'm wrong. Have we missed a match?
I think so.
So it'll be a very fun card. I'm very much looking forward to it. John, I'm glad that we finally got to do this. I mean, we've been kind of, Twitter acquaintances for a while now. It's been, I'm glad that we finally got to
No
sit
doubt,
down
man.
and do this.
I appreciate you having me. I appreciate you letting me talk about my shows. And, we also have the stuff going on at adfreeshows.com, all the shows that I host there, one-on-one, Up for Debate with Danny Cage, which is like a Pardon the Interruption style nostalgia debate show, and some other stuff too. I got Time Limit Draw with Lash LaRue and some other fun stuff there too. So I encourage anyone to check it out, adfreeshows.com. And I appreciate it, man.
And where can they find the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy as well as Wives of Wrestling?
Anywhere you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, anywhere. Just go hit that subscribe button, leave it a 5-star reviews or 5-star review, like what did we tweet out the other day? David's sheet of dirt, something like that. So 5-star reviews for both. And I really appreciate the support. It's been so overwhelming, and we're having a great time doing those shows. And we're going to be launching the Becoming Broken series this coming Friday on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. So be on the lookout.
I'm very much looking forward to that. We'll do this again very soon, my friend. Very happy to do this. So Jon Alba, everybody. And we will have a lot of other stuff's in the work. I'll tweet it out when it becomes public, but a lot of behind the scenes stuff happening with a few female professional wrestlers, winky face emoji. I will tweet that out whenever they become official. So Jon, again, mate, appreciate it. We'll do this again soon.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.